The Penguin, issue 1, Tom King writing with Raphael de la Torre on the art. So, we were very curious about this. Obviously, a Tom King book gets our eyes to light up. Yeah, it's set in continuity. Obviously, the stuff with Penguin's kids taking over all of his business in Gotham is, relevant, and it's referenced. It's not, they don't go into it too much in this issue, but it is referenced, and it's probably going to be important in coming issues.
Yeah.
But so the main narrative trick of this issue, right? And I think it's interesting that it's kind of set in references at some events in Killing Time, although thematically it feels quite different. Is that had its gimmick, right? That had the time gimmick where it kept saying, "Oh, this time and date," and it would jump around to different people on that time or that day, and it would build up a story around that, right? And every issue did that. This series seems to have its own gimmick as well, which is that there's multiple narrators, but the narrator is never Penguin himself. It's always someone who is with Penguin or watching Penguin in the scene.
We never know what Oswald's thinking.
Yes. But it does this great job of like building him up, like the way that other people are scared of him in this issue, or impressed by him, or like, Batman's attitude towards him and how different that is to everyone else.
Well, and his new fiance, how she just adores him by, the way that she talks about him in her monologue, right? Or whatever her narration is. Compared to how the tailor is completely like terrified of him, of saying the wrong word, right?
It's
in
funny.
Front of him.
It's almost meta to a point, because it gets to the point where it references that Batman doesn't take him seriously enough for us as the audience to realize that he's actually this scary to most regular people.
Yeah.
But he is. He bites people. Everyone's like scared of the life. But he's living quietly in Metropolis. He's supposed to be dead. And he's living his life out there. So the story starts and ends with this bookend of like something set a year later, because I think this is present day, and then it says a year ago when it goes into the main story. But Batman's crashed the Bat plane into the water, and it's sinking. Cobblepot's in the seat next to him, and they're drowning. And that's kind of like what we're sort of building up to, seemingly. And we go back a year later. It's in Metropolis. He's with his tailor, and the tailor's narration here is that because he says Cobblepot seems to have lost weight, he then gets worried in his head that he's implied that he looked bad before, and starts begging for his life, and he's like, "Oh, what's he going to do to my wife? What's he going to do to my kids? He's going to stab them with an umbrella." And he's like, he really comes across as this unhinged mob boss in this guy's head. But Penguin just says, "Oh, no big deal. People say things at a turn. It's not a big deal. I'll be back for my suit." He just kind of goes about it. And he's got his little bonnet cap on, and he goes to the park to feed the pigeons.
And this is where they're talking about the rule of thumb, right? Is that in this part?
No, I think that was later.
Okay.
Yeah, that was later, because that was when it was more menacing. Because the rule of thumb... So he explains this later, that the rule of thumb comes from...
this old proverb or this old story that back in like ancient history.
It's when the husband comes in to buy a...
That's right.
Because Penguin's working...
From the flower shop.
Yeah, Penguin's working as a florist, basically. And this guy comes in looking for flowers because he's forgot an anniversary with his wife. And he mentioned... Penguin says rule of thumb is you should you get what you pay for, because the guy says make it look expensive, but it's not. And then he goes into just explaining where the rule of thumb comes from, and Penguin explains that the rule of thumb is that back in the day when you could, like, it was acceptable to like assault your wife,
beat your wife.
The rule of thumb comes from those days because it was like you can hit her with a stick, but the rule is that it can't be any thicker than your thumb. Or it's too much. That's too much abuse. And boy,
does that come into play a little bit later.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is accurate. This origin of this phrase.
I've heard this too, but I've also heard people debunk it and go that's not. There's different origins for that term of rule of thumb. But yeah, I've definitely heard this one. On the internet.
It is worth mentioning that because of all these narration boxes on every scene. It is a very dense read, but I have to say every scene was very captivating. Like every single scene I was super into.
It took me 3 times to read this, not because I wasn't enjoying it, but just with the week I've had and how busy I've been sitting to read it, right before bed, and just there were so many boxes that I was just like, all right, I'll get to this tomorrow. you know, just because it's one that I want to sit and be able to read. And it took multiple times, but I'm glad that I got through it because, yeah, every scene, it just has like a richness to it.
It does this great thing where it builds where, so you've got, so not including the Batman thing, because that's kind of a separate bookend, is you've got this opening scene where it's this guy being scared of him, but he doesn't react to it. And then you've got him going to the park, and the narration in this scene is someone, we don't know who this is till later. It turns out to be the
Agent Bleep.
Yeah, Agent Blake from the, well, not Blake, is it Blake?
Bleep. No, Bleep.
Bleep, yeah.
Yeah, that's her nickname that she hates now.
Yeah, because it's, the name comes up later.
She was the super,
I know who she is. I'm just saying that I don't remember this name. I remember her actual name. Well, I don't, but I like that in my head. I'm seeing like a proper name.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so she's the one narrating during this park bit, and it's clear that they're surveying Cobblepot. They're watching his move, and she sends in an undercover cop to try and rail him up. And it's this big muscly guy, right? Yeah. Who comes in and just starts yelling F-bombs at him and calling him a fat boy and things like that. And the whole idea is that they're trying to see if he'll snap. And she says that this guy's scared and that they told him to wear a diaper because he might piss himself. And at the end of the scene, she mentions that he's pissed himself, and they're just lucky that Cobblepot didn't notice. But they're basically testing if Cobblepot will stick to his cover story, which is that he's a nice old man feeding the pigeons, and he's not going to snap. But he thinks, she genuinely thinks though that if this doesn't work and he does snap, this cop that she's set in is probably going to die. Like that's the attitude she has in this narration. It's very.
He's gonna rip his throat out with his bare hands.
It's really building up this character. But then after this, we get this complete shift to Penguin going home to his new wife, who is treating him like he's a little king. They end up in bed together. You know, they're being really sweet with each other. It's, you know, and the coloring here is great because, you know, all the stuff in the park was all this muted yellows and, like, you know, autumn colors. All this stuff, once they're in bed, it's all these strong pinks, all the romantic colors, you know.
I do love that he, you know, because they got a little bit into it that he burned dinner, right? Because they're sorry that he was trying to take care of really making dinner nice, so he waited for her to come home, so he didn't. And then they just get into it in bed, and he's like, oh, dinner's ruined anyways, you know. And it was just these nice little character moments with Oswald.
Yeah, and then it's the scene where the guy who comes in asking for the flowers for his wife.
Yep. The florist.
The Cobblepot's bird bites him and he gets really upset about it. And that's when eventually Espinosa, that's her name, Agent Espinosa comes in. And she's got a scar where her eye is because, and they reference this later, but Riddler shot her in the eye in Killing Time. So this is a character that King set up and I think created. I don't think she was from anything before that book.
Yep.
And she's here to bring in Cobblepot. And Amanda Waller's ends up being there. So they're behind the glass in the interrogation place, right? So Cobblepot can't see them. And this comes from this is Waller's narration, where she's basically saying how impressed she is that like this agent brought in Cobblepot, but she dare not show it. She doesn't want to show that she's impressed because that'll weaken her like demeanor and the respect she commands from her agents. And she actually kind of, you know, the agent provokes her a little bit. Agent Bleak provokes her by saying, "What? Not even a good job?" or something like that. And she's like, "I'll be impressed if you bring in Batman." But until then, nothing. So they do this thing where they keep Cobblepot locked up, and Espinosa goes in every day to give him food, take away his bucket that he's been shitting into. Everyone else is too scared to go in, but she keeps going in. And then eventually she goes in and basically pitches him that he's going to go back to Gotham, but he's working for them and he's going to take back his you know, empire, but for them. So I don't know if this is like technically saying that, you know, this is all under Amanda Waller, so this is kind of almost Suicide Squad-esque, but not exactly. But she recruits him, she provokes him by smoking in front of him, because he's been like basically going cold turkey.
Yeah, he tells his wife that he quit, and you know he's better off for it and stuff. And that's kind of a tell too that it's his old life is coming back to haunt him, right?
Yeah, I think what the book's doing is it's playing with this idea if he wants his old life back or not. We don't really know. but it does feel like he happily takes it when he's like offered it here
Well,
at the end.
doesn't she threaten, right? That he's like, I'll come after your wife, if you don't do this. Right?
She does, yeah.
So
The
so
agent says that, yeah.
Yeah. So he begrudgingly is like, I guess I have to do this because I want to protect the one person that I care about, you know. But yeah, which leads to the ending, which totally shocked me.
Well, before we even get to the ending, though, he doesn't say anything. He just like stands up and leaves the room because she says you're free to go at any time, but now you work for me. And like she has this moment after he leaves where like she knows that eventually he's probably going to try and kill her and will probably succeed, but she's like, for right now, the Penguin is mine. And there's this full page spread of her basically shouting F yeah as she's thinking the Penguin is mine. Like she's like reeled in this bird. She's caged the bird, damn it. And she's so excited about it. And the Penguin goes back to the tailor from the start of the book. Sorry, he did say one line. He said he had to go and pick up his suit. He did say that. But he goes to the tailor and beats the shit out of him with his umbrella. And then there's one last little bit at the end where we see them drowning in the bat plane again. But it is kind of an interesting thing. Like, if we read this final scene with Penguin, is he acting out of anger because he feels like he's been emasculated by this entire like thing that's just happened to him? So he's like going back to feel strong by like, you know, murdering this guy? Or is this him like basically saying, if I am that guy again, I'm going to go back and react like I would have done before?
So I read it as this is him having rage that his old ways, no matter what he tried to do, his old ways are, you know, so how am I going to put this? Is he can't escape. He can run, but he can't escape his old life. And this is his old life coming back. And so this is, to me, I read this as an act of rage that he embraces because, you know, he's going to have to go do this to save his new wife. And he's upset about that. But I also think he's definitely going to plot against everybody, and I feel that that's what leads to the bat plane being shot down in Gotham Harbor.
I am not convinced he's upset that he has to go back to this life. I'm not saying that I definitely think he wants it necessarily, but I think I read this scene more the first way I said, which is he's doing this because he has to get out his rage on someone, and this is the last person. Well, it's not the last person, but it's the easy person to go and retaliate against. I think he feels so angry about now being controlled by someone else, and that he feels like he has to do something for someone else, that he has to go and like be, because I mean Penguin's whole thing in a lot of ways is that because he was mocked for his limp and his looks and called the Penguin, that basically motivated him to be extra angry, extra vicious, and take control the way that he did of the underworld, right? So this idea that someone is now suicide squadding him and saying, you have to work for me now, and you've got no choice in the matter, that must make him feel so powerless. And if there's one thing we know the Penguin doesn't like, is feeling powerless. So
it's true.
The question for me is that once he gets back into this, is this a story about someone who really actually was happy that he was out of this life? Or is this a story of someone who is actually going to realize he loves being back in it? I actually don't know at this point.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be part of the fun of it, is it's going to keep us guessing. But it already feels like one of those Tom King prestige, you know, just with how much that it set us up and how much into the headspace we're not in to him, because we're usually pretty good in a Tom King book of knowing what the characters are thinking, and the sheer fact that he chose in this issue at least to give us everybody else's point of view about Oswald, and not Oswald himself. Like, is that going to be I don't want to say gimmick, but is that going to be the hook of the book? Is we're just going to watch him go through the stuff and not know exactly what his intentions are?
I think that this is the storytelling mechanic of the book, and we're either never going to hear Penguin's thoughts, or if we do, it'll be a special thing when we get to the last issue. Maybe he'll finally do it in the final part, but I don't think it'll be something that he does willy-nilly in issue 2 or 3. I think we'll hold it off until a big moment before we finally hear what he's thinking, if ever. We might never do it because what this succeeds in doing is building him up as this force of to be reckoned with. And the last thing Batman thinks as he's possibly dying with Penguin is, how the hell does he do this? Like he's underestimated Penguin. He's not aware of just how successful he was at being this criminal boss in the underworld, and how much like stuff he was getting away with in Gotham that, you know, Batman was capturing everyone else, and arguably everyone else Batman was capturing was more of a concern, really, because Penguin wasn't necessarily, you know, like he murdered people, but he wasn't a serial killer. You know, he murdered people in the organized crime way, occasionally when it called for it, but you know.
I always thought that he was the blending of Batman, of where, you know, Batman's not afraid to go bust heads, right? But he also has to be the rich guy. And I always felt like Penguin was the mirror of Batman. Of that was like, you know, he was always the gentleman killer, right? You know, he wasn't like Joker that was just instilling fear across the way. So the way that King does this, where like everyone still has a little bit of fear of the Penguin, because he can, you know, not snap at any moment, but he's going to do things that's going to end up in your demise. I like that whole vibe. It really makes the character pop differently than just the, you know, the mob boss that throws his money around.
I mean, definitely like a mob boss in this. It definitely felt like a mob boss who's in like witness protection or something like that. And
right, but not the mob boss way where he just has the money. It's the mob boss that he you know, stabbed and shot his way all the way to the top.
Oh yeah, that's absolutely there. But I would also disagree slightly. You said that it's not like he can just snap at any point. I think it is that he can snap at any point. I think the whole thing with Cobblepot's character is that he hated being made fun of so much when he was younger that if you slight him at all, he will try and kill you.
It's the pettiness that drives him. Yeah,
I'd say less gentleman killer and more like, if anything, it's the opposite. It's petulant child killer.
Yeah.
In a way.
Well, because I just always thought of it as, you know, like the idea of the Penguin is that he was ice cold, right? And he always kind of resembled a bird, right? But he was able to keep his composure for the most part.
If anything, if I was going to call anyone a gentleman killer, it'd be that guy from Killing Time. That was going around.
That was my next question. Are we going to see the Help pop up? That's kind of his Dark Alfred, because now he's going to get back into this. And if you need someone to help you get back control of Gotham City, who better than the Help?
I don't know. That's the honest answer to that, is I do not know. The art in here is very good, by the way.
Yeah, it's Rafael De La Torre, and it says here that he's done Daredevil. So it fits that vibe, right? It's got this grittiness to it.
I didn't recognize the name, but I think I might have seen some of his Daredevil stuff now you said that. But it's very moody, of course. The color schemes are like, each scene's got a distinct color scheme, which is very, very good, because it really has a good vibe to it. It has this idea that this world that Penguin's in Metropolis is this sunnier, happier place. And then as soon as you get to like the interrogation room, it's this cold, clinical, you know, all these things. You know, it stops being warm colors, because, you know, you had the romantic colors in the one bedroom scene, but for the most part it was oranges and yellows and stuff, and then pink's still a warm color. Once you get to the interrogation room, it's like, oh no, now everything's very, very muted. It's cold
and it's stark,
and
right?
it gets colder as the scene goes on. Like, you know, there's still a little bit of yellow and stuff in that first page, but then by the time Agent Espinosa comes in and sits down, it starts to just drain, and it's just more, it looks more like slightly green and white, more than anything else. And it's just completely, it's like Mr. Freeze has blasted the comic with a bit of a freeze gun by the time we get to the end of the scene. And I think that's to like go along with the mood, and that's really good. And honestly, the page after that, where Penguin's like murdering the tailor with his umbrella, that's probably the only time in the entire book where I feel like it breaks its formatting by going stylish. Because everything else up until that point, it's all very neat, clean boxes. In fact, that interrogation scene's a lot of 9-panel grids. Everything's very neat. Everything's very structured. And then you get to that panel, and it's the only one that's not in a box. It's you know, this red streak of blood that's going back behind the panels. Like it really sticks out and emphasizes the violence, because it's different from every other page in the book. So very good.
And you definitely read the rule of thumb thing at the end there, right? Where he was beating him with the umbrella, but the umbrella wasn't, or the stick, whatever, or the cane. He uses his cane, right? But it wasn't wider than Penguin's thumb.
Well, it's an umbrella he's using at the end.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So then it's the handle, right?
Yeah. I mean, that said though, I'm pretty sure this guy's dead. So I mean,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
I just feel like that was the rule of thumb coming back into play.
Because I feel like the rule of thumb thing, I assumed anyway, was to not leave any marks that were big enough.
Right.
But
right.
I've got a funny feeling this guy is going to look pretty rough when the police find him.
For sure.
just a feeling. So yeah, he's definitely dead. He's got blood coming from his head at the end in the last page. So no, I am very curious about where this goes and what they do with Penguin over the course of it. I don't remember how many issues this is supposed to have. In fact, it might even be technically an ongoing.
Yeah, there's no out of on the page because I looked at it on the cover.
That's fascinating.
There's none. Yeah.
Hey, maybe that means that King's got like a 25 issue story planned for this or something. It could mean
that's cool. That could be a lot of fun too. Because that means we're going to get to take our time with it. We don't have to rush that year, right?
Oh, yeah. And I really liked as well the pacing of this issue. I think the fact that all these scenes got to breathe and I got to really get engrossed in all of them. I hope it keeps up that pacing. I'm down for it. So, very nice. What you rating the Penguin, Matt?
I'm going to give this a solid 8.
I gotta go 9. I think I was super into it. The art's really nice. The narration always being from someone else's perspective in the scene, never Penguin himself, I thought was super effective. Probably more effective, I think, than the time mechanic of Killing Time. So, and to be honest, I like Killing Time, but I do think the whole flashback thing that was doing with the ancient stuff was, in hindsight, my least favorite thing about that whole book. I'm glad this didn't have that in it. It didn't have that weird subplot thing that it was putting in.
Yeah.
I suppose you could argue the book ends with the present day stuff is kind of what that's going to be here, but that feels more conventional to me. It doesn't feel...
Yeah. No. That was definitely King taking a risk in that one, right?
Yeah.
To kind of try to point the story of whatever the I was, right? So here it's a little bit different. This is definitely Oswald's story completely.
Yeah.
So, yeah.